276,000. Chancellor, I'm no economist. Some would argue neither are you. How is that stabilising the economy? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. When I became a Chancellor last year, there was a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. Yes. It involved a number of difficult decisions to put those public finances on a firm footing. But we did that in the budget last year with decisions around welfare, tax and spending as well. And as a result, within 2 years, we are going to pay for all day-to-day spending through tax receipts, something that the previous Conservative government never achieved. And we're going to get debt down as a share of GDP. So that's what I mean when I say that the economy is now more stable. It's enabled the Bank of England to cut interest rates four times.
But the Bank of England is separate from the government, of course, Chancellor.
Yes, but the Bank of England were forced to increase interest rates substantially in the last Parliament because of the economic mismanagement of the Conservative government who lost control of the public finances.
What would you call the Bank of England downgrading growth forecast from 1.5% to 0.7%, the OBR halving growth estimate? That doesn't speak to a stabilised economy, does it?
Well, you're talking about 1 year rather than looking at future years, and the OBR downgraded growth this year. I think we can all see there's a lot of instability in the world at the moment, but they upgraded growth in every other year of the forecast. And by the end of the forecast, are now predicting the economy will be bigger than they thought just at the time of the budget last year. So, look, we can trade stats and facts and figures. But yesterday in the spending review, what I did was allocate the money that I set out in last year's budget across all government departments with a real focus on security, because the world is changing and defence is more important than perhaps it's been at any time since the end of the Cold War. We are increasing investment in our health service to get NHS waiting lists down, and we're also investing in those things to grow our economy in all parts of the country to make working people better off. I believe that those are the priorities of the British people, and those were the choices that I made yesterday.
There's a lot of commentary over how this is to be paid for, and you're right, what's not to like about increased expenditure in defence and other areas in housing and trams and trains, I understand. But can you tell me, can you say, read my lips, no tax rises in the autumn?
Well, what I did yesterday was allocate the money from last year's budget. But this is important because people are saying that we spent this money yesterday. This is money that I set aside last autumn in the budget. And, you know, and I'm not going to shy away from it, I did increase taxes in the budget last autumn. But that is what paid for the spending I set out yesterday. So everything I set out yesterday has already been funded, has already been costed. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to write another 4 years worth of budget.
So you can't say, read my lips, no tax rises this autumn?
Well, I think it would be very risky for a Chancellor to try and write future budgets in a world as uncertain.
I'm only asking for a few months' time, Chancellor.
Yes, but look, the world is very uncertain at the moment. But what I can tell you and your listeners, what I can say to your listeners is I won't have to repeat a budget like the one that I did last year. Last year, I wiped the slate clean after the mismanagement and the broken promises of the previous government. We do now have that path to lower borrowing, to lower debt, which is absolutely crucial to be able to bring that stability back to our economy.
You and your colleagues said prior to the election that you wouldn't raise taxes on working people, but council tax, I read, is now to go up by 5%. Working people pay council tax. That's a broken promise, Chancellor, isn't it?
Well, that's a cap on council tax, and no one's saying that councils have to increase it. But let me also add this.
I sense they will.
Well, look, last year we had that cap and the Conservatives had that cap. And that's something that's been in place for a number of years. So it's not something that we have changed. But the taxes that the government levies on working people, income tax, national insurance and VAT, they haven't gone up. And in addition to that, we froze fuel duty in April this year, whereas the previous government had planned to increase it. So we are trying to ensure that working people have got more of their own money in their pockets. It's also why we increased the national living wage in April to give a pay rise to 3 million of the lowest paid workers in our country.
All right. You've earned another nickname in some quarters today, the Klarna Chancellor, as in buy now, pay later. How do you respond to that charge?
I don't accept that at all because, as I say, all of this money was allocated in the
Yes, but you can't
budget
tell me you're not going
year.
to raise taxes in 4 or 5 months' time, Chancellor, I note.
Well, not to pay for anything that I did yesterday, because
but going
yesterday
forward,
everything was fully funded. But the idea that yesterday I've racked up a bill that I'm going to need to pay for in the future, that's just not right. Last year I had to increase taxes, and I've now allocated that money in the spending review on health, security, and economic growth. So everything yesterday was fully costed and fully funded from the budget last year.
You mentioned the importance of defence. I note that you've changed the definition of defence spending to include the whole of UK intelligence and some FCDO spending, when previously MI6 pensions were included. Was that to effectively pull the wool over our eyes? Why did you do that?
No, so our commitment is to get to 2.5%. We have not included all intelligence spending. We have
some
included
intelligence spending you have.
Yes, we have under the NATO definition, because obviously, increasingly, intelligence is an important part of our defence. Intelligence when it comes to Russian operations, for example. But that takes us to 2.6% because we were spending 0.1% of GDP.
The NATO wording is expenditure is included only in proportion to the forces that are trained in military tactics, are equipped as a military force, can operate under direct military authority in deployed operations. So MI6 and MI5 are going to be drafted for military conscription.
No, the intelligence service. So this is exactly what the United States do, and it's under the NATO definition. I'm absolutely confident of that. We're not putting all intelligence spending in. It's just the proportion that is related to our country's defence, because increasingly intelligence is an important part of our defence. But Nick, our promise in our manifesto was to get to 2.5%. We get to that under the old measure, but when you add in that intelligence spending, it takes it up to 2.6%. And of course, we've got that commitment in the next Parliament to get to 3%. But yesterday we put £11 billion a year by the end of the Parliament into defence.
We've only got a minute or so left together. Let's just look at some recent figures. You'll be aware that the GDP figures are falling by 0.3%, worse than was predicted. Unemployment up 50,000 this week. You talk about a stable economy. This is about as stable as Thomas Tuchel's England defence, isn't it?
Well, obviously, monthly GDP numbers are particularly volatile, and April was a challenging month. It's when the US tariffs came in. But of course, since then, we've secured 3 trade deals with India, the United States, and with the European Union. So look, those numbers move around. And if you dig into those numbers, you can see that trade was particularly affected and production. So if you look at the 3-month rolling GDP, it's up by 0.7%.
Finally, you talk about election promises. You promised that there would be the end of use of asylum-seeking hotels, as they're called, within the first year. Now that's been extended to the full lifetime of the Parliament. Another broken promise. Why has the government failed in this area, Chancellor?
Well, we're deporting many more people than the previous government, and we committed yesterday to end asylum use at hotel, which is something that the Home Secretary
you said it would be done within
to.
12 months, Chancellor.
Well, we're going to end it in this Parliament. It's going to save us £1 billion, and that's money that we can reinvest in our frontline public services and get those hotels back.
But there's £280 million for the Border Security Command. How is that different from the Border Force and other agencies?
Well, it's more money. It's additional money.
But why do we need a Border Security Command, Chancellor? This is the old police adage, if in doubt, form a squad, isn't it? Because they don't do anything different from what the Border Force or other agencies could do.
Well, obviously it's not working today, is it? Because we've got these huge numbers of people crossing the English Channel. So we can't just carry on doing... Nick, we can't just carry on doing what we've done before because it's not working.
I couldn't agree more. So what will the Border Security Command do that the other agencies can't do?
So particularly the new powers we've given, terrorism-like powers to crack down on the gangs who are exploiting people and charging for bringing them into this country. That's the sort of work that the Border Security Command will do, and also gathering in intelligence to make those arrests and stop those crossings. But that was, I think, money well invested yesterday, because everybody wants to get those crossings down. And if people come here illegally, they should know they will be deported. Deportations have gone up massively since we came to office last year, as they should be.
OK, you mentioned legality. Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan, says there could be cuts to the Met. There's no commitment for London infrastructure. It could mean fewer police officers. Your response to Sir Sadiq?
Well, what I would say is that police spending power is going up by 2.3% a year above inflation. That is a generous...
Well, Sir Mark Rowley is nervous. He might have to make cuts as well. So Sir Sadiq is not on his own.
Well, look, police have to live within the budgets we've set, but that is a real terms increase, well above inflation, and police now need to deliver within that budget. People have to pay for every public service. As a Chancellor, I have to balance those needs for investment in public services whilst also not spending more money than we have. And those are decisions we made yesterday. But it's a generous police settlement, well above inflation, well above the average that they've had the last few years under the Conservatives.
Very grateful for your time. Thank you. Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves joining us here on LBC, taking us to 3 minutes after 8. Let's get the latest headlines.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has refused to rule out tax rises in her budget later this year. Health and defence were the major beneficiaries of yesterday's spending review, but some